the question was asked, Eli Manning's career or Aaron Rodgers' career, right? It was proposed to him in that way. And CJ Stroud said, I would prefer Eli Manning's career. Now, my questions to you, to the chat, to anybody watching is, one, do you believe him? And two, do you agree with him? Let's start with Mike on this one.
I want to pass this one to Joe because I already know he's just going to hate. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, but I believe him. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers did to CJ Stroud. Like maybe he snubbed him for an autograph when he was a young kid. But to come out here in the offseason and just throw this fire out there, I love it personally because I've been telling you guys Aaron Rodgers has been overrated for the last couple of years, and Mike's over here goggling him down. And I've told you that nobody wants to hear the Aaron Rodgers story anymore. Like, come on. What is it all? We've been talking about this for a long time, Tony. The newer generation only judges you off of what? Winning and winning championships. If you're not winning a championship, you ain't doing shit. Eli Manning is cool, calm, collective, and that guy, he has a great sense of humor. He can go out there and joke about it, and he's taken down the GOAT 2 times, Tony. 2 times, something Aaron Rodgers could never do.
Dos Cadenas. Mike, now you got to jump in here on this.
I mean, yeah, this talk about the new generation only cares about championships. No, we care about longevity, Joe. Who is our GOAT? Who is our representative? LeBron James, not Michael Jordan. This 6 championships just because he won 6 championships. Aaron Rodgers has been at the top of the NFL and at the top of everything to do with the NFL for almost freaking 15 years now consecutively. I mean, it doesn't feel like it ever is going to end until he retires. Even after that, he's going to keep it going. Eli Manning didn't make an all-pro team. Not a single one. Yeah, I understand the 2 Super Bowls are cool. Aaron Rodgers still won 1. I'd understand this argument a little bit if he had 0 and had no Super Bowls. But we're talking about one of the best quarterbacks of all time, undebatably, whether you hate him or you love him, Joe. He's got to be at least in your top 10, right?
Who are you talking to? You ain't talking to me.
He's not even you, Joe. He's asking you a question. Answer the question. You are under oath.
Top 10 all time?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Oh shit! You better start putting a list down because as much as I don't like Aaron Rodgers, he is definitely a top 10 quarterback all time, like 1,000%.
And Eli Manning, who I think will go to the Hall of Fame just because of the moments and the history, and he did have a long enough career to build up some stats to make that argument. But the guy is going to be borderline, debatably in the Hall of Fame. 2 miracle runs with 2 wild card teams. Over 15 years of being one of the best quarterbacks of all time, winning all pro after all pro, playoff game after playoff game, playoff loss after playoff loss. But still, there's no debate here between these 2. Now, some of these other ones that you listed, Tony, which I think we'll get into, they're a little bit closer, a little bit harder to talk about here because it's like the 2 pros and cons are a little bit different. But Eli Manning versus Aaron Rodgers shouldn't even be close. I don't even know what the fuck CJ Stroud is talking about.
Like you just made the point for him. You said he won 2 championships with 2 wild card teams that shouldn't even been there. That's how much he elevated his team. Aaron Rodgers was the number 1 seed how many damn times and still couldn't get his team anywhere?
But why were they wild card teams, Joe? Because all of Eli Manning's New York Giants teams barely made the playoffs when they did make the playoffs or missed the playoffs every year.
Because the regular season doesn't mean shit.
So why do we even play it? Why don't we just fucking skip ahead to the postseason in every sport?
If you're the regular season, the best regular season player ever, good for you. Good for you.
I remember growing up, most of the time, Aaron Rodgers was argued as like the most talented quarterback ever. Like there was an argument with him versus Brady. How are we bringing this all the way back to Eli? I don't get it.
Okay, so I want to squash something right now. Eli Manning is 1,000% going into the Hall of Fame. There's no like he has an argument or whatever, because part of the element of the Hall of Fame is, can you tell the story of the NFL without this person? And it's like, you can't tell the story of the NFL because that is potentially the greatest football team I've ever seen was that Patriots team, the 07 team that was 18-0 or whatever going into that game. They beat that team. Then he also, it's like Joe said, he just doesn't have the one against the Patriots. And it's not that Eli Manning beat Tom Brady. He did, but he overcame Bill Belichick, who is considered the greatest defensive mastermind of all time. Even when we could have gotten into a conversation about Belichick and will he coach ever again or whatever, that go down that road. But he still at the end had his fastball on defense. The Patriots defense was still good these past couple of seasons, even though the team record didn't necessarily reflect that. So like he was able to overcome teams that had really good defense that are extremely well coached. Now, if we're just talking about the two careers, the thing that I find most interesting about this is that I believe, and I think many people believe, football is the ultimate team game, right? And we celebrate team accomplishments. Somehow we've gotten more to this like conversation where it's about the quarterback and the quarterback only and whatever else. It's like, yes, we're focused on this because Brady and Mahomes have won so many of the championships over consecutive years in a row, and it makes it tough for us to see anything else. But like, Mike, we're Chargers fans. How are you going to feel if somehow miraculously the Chargers win the Super Bowl this year and everybody goes, well, Justin Herbert was carried by Coach Harbaugh? And it's like, he finally got help on defense and in coaching and everything else. Like, why can't he get the same praise? Like, what if they start putting Herbert in the same bucket as like the Brock Purdy's and the Joe Flacco's? And we're like, no, he's on the same level as these other guys. Like, he's in the Eli Manning bucket. He's in that. Like, aren't you going to be frustrated and yelling at the internet? Like, my thing is, if you win, the goal is to win Super Bowls. And Eli Manning has done that twice. That to me is kind of why you play the game.
But that wouldn't happen, Tony, if Justin Herbert won a Super Bowl, because Justin Herbert will win a Super Bowl off the back of an MVP freaking season. Eli Manning was winning Super Bowls off the back of barely Pro Bowl, not even Pro Bowl seasons. So it's a big difference. We're talking about Joe Flacco. I don't know. I mean, Mike, Joe Flacco versus Eli is pretty close to me.
There is easily a world in which Herbert does not make a Pro Bowl, is clearly not named to an All-Pro season in the AFC, but somehow over the next couple of years that the team is good enough to win a Super Bowl, and then you know that they're going to start this Herbert Harbaugh conversation. It will 1,000% happen. I know that I'm going with these like extreme like 1,000% analysis here. It will definitely happen if they win a Super Bowl.
What's the Pro Bowl snub going to be? Like Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson all scored 40 touchdowns, and Herbert scored 39.
Burrow, Stroud, the AFC, and Lawrence. They have so many good quarterbacks, and those are statistical, like they're beauty pageants. They don't necessarily care about like the end result, and the end result, like in a team game, you have to get 11 people functioning. Like there was a great, like Chase Daniels, when he opened up the thing and he did that playbook and he's like, oh, there's all of this stuff happening. And I commented on it and I said, I'm surprised there's not more miscommunications. Chase Daniels responded and he goes, you'd be surprised how many actual miscommunications there are in every single play. So it's a miracle that some of this stuff works out the way that it does.
But Eli Manning has more 20 interception seasons than he does 30 touchdown seasons.
Sure.
Compared to Aaron Rodgers, who has 44 in 7 seasons.
So I am personally of the thing where of the mindset where I would rather be a multiple time Super Bowl winner than I would be somebody who has all of the accolades at the top of the mountain.
But still like a Super Bowl winner. Still a Super Bowl winner also on top of it. You'd rather be the multiple time Super Bowl winner than all the accolades and still a Super Bowl winner. And still going, by the way, y'all are talking like Aaron Rodgers is done and isn't going to win the Super Bowl this year. Okay.
No. I'm not. We're not. Mike, please stop that conversation. The Jets are not winning the Super Bowl this year. I will say this.
He did it first.
If they do, you're right, Mike. I won't be happy about it. I will say this. we're basing it on what they've done to this point, right? We don't know what the next couple of years hold for Aaron Rodgers or the Jets or any other team that he might end on if he goes on a revenge tour and continues, whatever. I will say this, that winning the extra Super Bowl to me is the difference maker, that I would personally rather have the more Super Bowls than be at the top of the statistical mountain. Joe?
I wish I had the Herm Edwards. I wish I had the Herm Edwards mic'd up right now to say, hello, you played to win the game, Mike. You played to win the game. Hello? But I got this one. Hello? I got this one for you.
I'm Eli Manning. I'm nice. Tom Brady's the GOAT. Psych! I beat him twice!
I guarantee you Aaron Rodgers is a better rapper than Eli Manning as well. But if winning is the path, right? Winning is the reason we play the game, right? Why does Eli Manning have a 500 win percentage as a quarterback in the NFL?
Because Eli Manning learned early in his career, it doesn't matter about the regular season. Just get to the playoffs and then make magic, homie.
He didn't make the playoffs. He didn't make the playoffs. This is what I'm saying.
Will it help you if I just admit to you that Aaron Rodgers is the far superior quarterback?
With the far superior career as well. Yes.
Yes, except for the fact that
we all agree.
He doesn't have 2 Super Bowl rings.
We all agree that Aaron Rodgers' career is the career that we would choose if we were going to choose, right, between these two.
So two guys, their careers are going to end up in the same place. They're both going to end up in the Hall of Fame, right? When it's all said and done and numbers go and whatever.
Yeah.
I would rather have the career of the person that went to the mountaintop twice and was king of the mountain. That's all I'm saying. Now, would I love to have the career of either of these two people to have that kind of success? I've never reached the mountaintop in anything that I've pursued. So, yes, I would love to have a career where I won the Super Bowl of whatever profession it was that I was in. But I'm just saying, if I had to choose one of these, I'm kind of with CJ Stroud on this one. It's not even, and the thing that's funny to me is that CJ Stroud is clearly, if year one is an indicator, is clearly more like Aaron Rodgers than he is like Eli Manning. He's just saying, I want to have them both. But I don't like the fact, I like CJ Stroud way more than I thought I would, because he was an Ohio State guy. I rooted against him. I loved watching him lose all those games against Michigan, being from Michigan, big Michigan football fan. I enjoyed that. Now that he's in the NFL and I'm watching these podcasts, I really enjoy listening to him. He's California cool. He says everything that he wants to say when he's on the mic. I find him extremely entertaining. So I'm all for him putting this out there.
Well, now I hope that he lives out the career of freaking Eli Manning and makes only one more Pro Bowl in his career, but wins a Super Bowl here because the Texans defensive line, then wins another Super Bowl here because of the Texans receivers, and then retires very young compared to the rest of his QBs around him.
But CJ Stroud said more, Tony. He said more. So go ahead. Lead us into that one.
So I didn't pull any of that. You can, if you want to bring it up, go ahead.
So he also said if Matthew Stafford had the same career or the same team that Aaron Rodgers did, Matthew Stafford would have multiple championships over Aaron Rodgers.
I honestly, so this has been my argument forever when I talk to you guys, that I think that certain people end up in situations that are just great for them, right? I've talked about this. How many times did I say Carson Palmer's career would have been completely different had he not started his career in Cincinnati? Played for the Raiders, played for the Cardinals. He was never in one of those great organizations, not from a prestige standpoint. Obviously the Raiders are, an all-time organization, but I'm talking about the way that it's run. He didn't end up in a situation like Tom Brady where Mr. Kraft was turning it over to people that were really in a great place. And I think the more that we're learning about the Patriots, we're starting to see a lot of those names and guys that were also there with Belichick. We give credit to the names that we know, but now we're starting to learn about the guy Ernie, fuck, I forgot his last name. He was just on Julian Edelman's podcast. Him and Belichick were best friends. He was great, a strategist, an analyst. Like Belichick leaned on him. The Dante Scarnecchias, the offensive line coach that were there. A lot of times when certain guys were leaving, there was things that needed to be overcome. At a certain point, you just lose too many minds and you can't be as competitive. But if Carson Palmer would have been in a different spot, if Warren Moon, some of these guys that were mega talents would have been in better conditions, I believe they would have won. And that goes for Matthew Stafford. Like, we're talking about a team that was 0-16. This is like Matthew Stafford was born into, like, Mike loves to make fun of the Lions. And we've talked about it. Like, my grandfather has been a Lions fan since the team began, and he would tell me stories when I was a kid about Bobby Lane. Mike was like, this person doesn't exist. You made him up. Like, the internet can't even find him. Like, they just started putting evidence of those teams onto the internet.
Well, isn't Bobby Lane the reason that the Lions are so trash, even though Matthew Stafford played half his career with maybe the greatest wide receiver we've ever seen grace a football field? Maybe because the Bobby Lane curse, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers ever had a receiver on Megatron's level, Mr. Stroud.
Okay, but again, it's not just about a player, and I think you would agree
True.
with that. It's about coaching. It's about like organizational structure, and we would agree the Lions have not had great coaching nor great structure. That's why guys like Megatron and Barry Sanders retired after like 9 and 10 years in the league, because they didn't want to necessarily deal with what was going on there.
And I agree that Stafford's been in worse situations than Aaron Rodgers in his career by a wide margin. But I also believe that the Lions are better off with Aaron Rodgers and Megatron teaming up than Stafford and Megatron teaming up.
I don't agree.
So if you switch them, what you're saying basically is that Matthew Stafford is better than Aaron Rodgers, Joe.
No, what I'm saying is Matthew Stafford is a better teammate than Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers puts himself in bad situations all the time. Like when you look what he did when he came to the Jets. Bring in all these guys for me. I think Aaron Rodgers makes it hard for his team and his players sometimes, where Matthew Stafford would have took the little bit of pressure off some of these Green Bay Packers teams, calmed them down in the playoffs instead of yelling and screaming at his young wide receiver.
I've never seen Aaron Rodgers screaming at any wide receivers. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't. Also, that last year's Jets team, we're not giving them any credit because they won 7 games, losing their superstar, elite, all-time level quarterback on the 4th play of the season. And they still won 7 games. You're acting like that team is absolute hot, steamy, garbage, train wreck, bad.
Mike, what size jersey do you have? I'm gonna get on Fanatics and order you an Aaron Rodgers Jet jersey.
I would love one. Please send me one, because he is one of the most hated players of all time. This is like an OBJ situation where he just had 1 catch and 4 1,500-yard seasons, but just 1 catch. Now we're going on 15-year career. Like, Aaron Rodgers is in the top 5 quarterbacks all time. I can't even believe that we're comparing him to Eli Manning and Matthew Stafford. No offense.
Did Jordan Love not do what the same damn thing Aaron Rodgers has done with the same damn team?
How? He hasn't won a Super Bowl. You just said it's all about winning the Super Bowl, right? Nothing else matters. Let's talk about the next one on the list that Tony has here then, Joe. Would you rather have Joe Flacco's career than Dan Marino's?
Yes.
Move on to the next topic. Just move on to the next fucking topic, please.
Nobody even, besides the old people in the NFL, who talks about Dan Marino anymore?
Again, I think
it might have been the greatest quarterback to ever play in the NFL. But does he get the love? No, because of what? He's not a fucking winner, champion. He has never won a Super Bowl, so he's not a champion. So he's not going to get the love that he ever deserves. So Joe Flacco, look what happened to Joe Flacco last year. Everybody fell in love with him. And you know he is a Super Bowl champion. Winning matters, and that's all that matters. That's the only thing that matters.
You're going Bradshaw over Roethlisberger also in this comparison.
Hang on. There's a reason why I put these on here, and I'm going to explain it, right? So I think that, again, Joe went the route I would have gone. I think if you asked me if I could have Joe Flacco's career, or Dan Marino's career, I probably would go Joe Flacco because, again, you get the Super Bowl championship. Now, the reason that I put Roethlisberger versus Bradshaw on there is because you have 4 Super Bowls and then you have 2 Super Bowls. So by the logic that I've already laid out is that I've been picking the person that has more Super Bowls. The reason I put this one on there is because it's almost like if there's not a ton of evidence there, it didn't really happen. Like the way that it was covered. So if you told me that I could have Roethlisberger's career and I still get the multiple Super Bowl championships, then I would start to factor in like how much evidence is out there, how much relevance is there, how much like modern like footage and capturing of the mind, because like we keep comparing you're comparing the skills of these players, and I think that's what's getting lost here is the certain players that we're comparing here are definitely have more quote unquote skill, but for me it's like legacy and evidence of being great. And there's more evidence, obviously, because there's more coverage and more footage and everything, the closer that we get to now than when we go back to the 70s with Bradshaw.
Here, Mike, I'll piss you off right now.
There's just no argument for
20 years from
Joe
now.
Flacco being greater than Dan Marino, man.
20 years from now, who are people going to be talking
about being great? What are you guys talking about?
Right here.
No, Aaron Rodgers is greater. Dan Marino is greater than Flacco and Eli combined. Both of them as individuals.
That doesn't matter. I'm talking about, okay, this here, I'll put it in your perspective, Mike. 20 years from now, who are people going to be talking about? Are they going to be talking about Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, or Ben Roethlisberger? They're going to be talking about the 2 that won the Super Bowl, and the other guy, Phillip Rivers, is going to be forgot about.
I don't think that he's going to be completely forgotten about for one.
If you're not relevant in the history of the past, they're not going to talk about you.
You're talking about 2 versus 0. Who are we talking about in 100 years? Dan Marino or Joe Flacco?
Joe Flacco.
There's no way we're talking about Joe Flacco over Dan Marino in 100 years when Dan Marino is still in probably the top 25 passers in an era that took running backs off the fucking field. That's how good Dan Marino was. This dude had 15,000 yards passing in his first 3 seasons of his career. And he didn't stop from there. He didn't slow down. Multiple-time MVP. He didn't win a Super Bowl. Oh, well.
But when you look at Dan Marino's hands, is there anything on that hand?
All right, let's talk about the Bradshaw versus Roethlisberger argument, Tony. Please introduce it. I want to hear Joe's answer where he completely goes against everything he just said and chooses Roethlisberger over Bradshaw.
I'm not taking Roethlisberger. I never would.
So this is the only, like, I think quarterback is the position where these types of things get magnified, right? Because they get so much credit and so much blame. Like, we look at it and go, oh, Dan Marino wasn't, quote unquote, good enough to get his team to a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl or whatever. But we would all agree, Mike, in this conversation, Dan Marino is a better quarterback than Joe Flacco is. I'm not arguing that. You're asking me which player is the better player. I would say that. I'm saying that for legacy purposes, which career would I rather have? I'd rather have the career that has the Super Bowl on it.
I still would rather have the career that just goes nuts every single season over one Super Bowl.
And that is
fine. We can agree to disagree on that. Exactly. I'd rather be a top 10 quarterback all time than a bottom 100, after 100, somewhere after there, and have my one Super Bowl ring that I won because of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and that defense that I did not win because Joe Flacco's a beast at quarterback. That's not, I don't understand. I feel like
do some research on how that run went for Joe Flacco. That playoff run for Joe Flacco was insane.
I mean, he was throwing it up. I get it. He was balling out. But if you put Dan Marino, if he gets drafted to the Ravens, he's probably still the starting quarterback of the fucking Ravens to this day. That's how good he was. That's what I'm saying. So that's it's just crazy to me. And you're going to take Bradshaw over Roethlisberger after that whole argument about being known in 100 years. Bradshaw won't even be a thought in 100 years. But do you include Bradshaw's commentating career in that, or like what tips it his way? Just because Bradshaw won 4 Super Bowls when they were throwing 7 interceptions per Super Bowl on average each year, like, and the competition was way lower and you had to get brain damage.
There's no doubt that Terry Bradshaw has brain damage. There ain't no doubt about that.
There's no doubt.
But Dan Marino right now, Mike, Dan Marino is has the eighth most passing yards in history right now.
Uh-huh.
So you don't think that's all going to be passed up? Aaron Rodgers is ninth. So he's going to be
they will probably still be in the top 20 because if you think about it, Dan Marino, his era is what, about 30 years ago now? So he times that by 3, just based off of how it's going right now. He's slowly moved down to 8. In 100 years, he's going to be down to 20, 25 at the lowest.
So I
again, with the eras kept in mind, it's pretty impressive.
Again, yes, and I agree with that. I do think that you have to factor in certain things because now you have a more friendly passing league, right? Where they are throwing the ball more and there is less defense. Like when you look at the era that Marino played in, it makes it that much more impressive because of the way the DBs were allowed to play, the way the defense was allowed to hit players over the middle. Like all of the things that Dan Marino did to me are still some of the most impressive statistical feats we've ever seen. Again, it's not an argument. It's simply a preference. Would you rather have the statistical greatness or the Super Bowl? That's it. It's just a would you rather. I don't think that you're arguing it as if there's a right or wrong answer. I don't believe that there's a right or wrong answer. It's just a preference.
And I'm glad you guys have your preference. You can keep your preference because in 100 years, it won't matter.
There is no way that I live another 100 years.